Good morning, friends. It's morning water for me, actually, this morning. Just enjoying a bowl of cold water. That seems strange. Sometimes I look at this stuff and I am amazed by it. Just ah, what is this stuff that's clear and has such a strange feeling and it's so present in our lives, but so unusual at the same time. This morning I'm filming here to put a little block because it's a rather loud morning. There's some construction being done next door, and you might be able to hear it. So there's an earth moving machine. And for some reason this morning too, it seems like all the small planes in all of the nearby town have decided that we're the cool place to fly over because there's been flyover after flyover. That might come during this too. At first I thought, maybe I'll just film two tomorrow instead of trying to film with all this noise going on. But then I thought, well, actually, it's very fitting for what I was going to talk about today with you. Because I keep hearing this noise at night. I sleep outside a lot, or else the windows have been open. In either case, I keep hearing this strange noise. It starts late at night. And it's a repetitive noise. And you may know how, from your own experience, how repetitive noise is. This is almost like a beep, 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 beep. It can drive you crazy. And the weird thing is I've heard it a couple times. Probably this is be the fifth time I heard it. If I'm thinking back now to last night when I think I uncovered the mystery. So the story is that the first night I heard it, and it wasn't beep, beep, beep. It was clip, 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 clip. It was an Amish buggy. Now, this happens late at night. I don't know what the Amish are doing out at 2, 3 in the morning, but sometimes they're out that late. And I heard this clip, clip, clip of the horse's shod hooves on pavement. You can tell that sound from something else, say I don't know, some kind of beeping machine, not because the sound is particularly different. The way it carries over the hills, it has almost a mechanicalness sometimes, the clip clip of it. But because the Amish carts are going to go up hills, go down hills, stop sometimes, there's a deviation in the rhythm. So I heard it the first night, and it was clearly a deviated rhythm. Then the second night I heard it, and there was no deviation in the rhythm. And I was listening and listening, and I enjoy that sound. It's the sound of horse hooves. It takes me to another time. But it kept going on. It was very, very repetitive. It didn't deviate at all. And that, instead of taking me to another time, took me to modern times, where there's machines and all kinds of human noise-making things, often that beep or buzz or hum or whatever. So that was the first night that it became difficult. And I just tried to tune it out. I was pretty tired that night and managed to sleep through it. I heard it the next night and the next night, and it kept being repetitive and not deviating. Now, this all happens 2 or 3 in the morning when our minds, at least my mind, can be a little less rational. sometimes. And I decided that this was not an Amish buggy that I was hearing. It must be some kind of something else. And maybe that first night I had been mistaken in hearing the deviation in the rhythm. Or perhaps this was some kind of a beeping sound that could have deviations in its rhythm. But it went on too long in seemingly one place without deviation for it to be an Amish buggy. At first, it was just kind of driving me crazy. Then it became my mind stepped in and said, "We'll use this as a discipline challenge." Because if you've played with meditation and other things, you probably know that your sensory stimuli, whether that is the sensation of pain or a sense, often even an emotional sensation, even your things like your hearing, you can turn those off in a way by putting your mind somewhere else. So I just used it as training each night and felt my mind wanting to be pulled back to that. Don't you hear that beep, 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 beep? And then to focus on your breath. Or I focused on counting my breath. Uh, Focused on trying to invoke a flying dream, or a couple other things I tried. And each time I tried that, I would go back and forth from, okay, I'm in that other mind state. I literally cannot even hear the beep. Oh, my mind's getting pulled back. Beep, 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 beep. Oh, pulled back in the way I want it. To that softness. Pulled back to the beep, beep, beep. Back and forth. And each night, I was happy to find that I could find success. And after going back and forth a few times, I could turn off that audio sensation and go into a state of rest and stillness and then fall asleep. But last night, I said to Rebecca before bed, this has been happening each night. I'm going to figure this out. So if I am gone for a little bit, that's why. And I was prepared to hike off over the hills or get on my bike and trace down this sound. I was sleeping outside. Beep, 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 beep. I could hear the sound come. And I listened. And I listened really carefully this time. Tuned into it instead of trying to turn it off. And I listened to it for a while, and I heard it grow closer. It was definitely the sound I was hearing. And then heard it go up an incline, so it slowed down. Heard it steady off again. I actually heard it stop and then restart. It was clearly shown to me last night that it was an Amish buggy. And that's what I've been hearing all along. Now I feel quite sure of it because I've investigated it clearly with my senses. Cool, interesting that we have a sense, that hearing, that can venture off over the hills, can do essentially what I was going to do with my feet or with my bicycle. Just travel out and gather its own information. So I became sure that it was, and here's the kind of the clincher and the interesting thing for me, is that once I knew for sure that it was an Amish buggy, the sound was pleasant. Even when it leveled off and became repetitive. I think there's a stretch of road and it's just been so humid that the sound is carrying more than it usually does. So that longer stretch of road where we usually can't hear a car is projecting that sound. Or somebody's just making these mysterious midnight runs, after midnight runs, and hasn't been doing it before. In whatever case, it's a new night sound. And now I'm going to find it pleasant. Why is the same input, the same sound, pleasant if my mind thinks of it as an Amish buggy and the sound of the hoofbeats? And it is a negative experience and an unpleasant thing if I think of it as an electronic beep going off somewhere. And what does that mean for our ability to shift our experience of the world based on it could be knowledge or just deciding what something is if we can't figure it out, or looking into our judgments and ideas about the world. What do you think? I had a vaguely similar, well, I guess quite similar experience. Probably, well, it was a little bit after the 4th of July when a neighbor over there somewhere decided quite late, probably 10, 11 o'clock, that they're going to shoot off a very impressive for just, regular civilian uh, display of fireworks. The timing was a little interesting because most of the neighborhood was asleep. And again, Rebecca and I found ourselves in a place, and this, I guess it was prior to this whole lesson, where we could frame that in different ways. One, those a-holes that have no consideration for their neighbors. B, which we kind of figured out was maybe the truth later. They were doing something, celebrating something, came back home, shot off an incredible display of fireworks for everybody to see. Now, I have my own feelings about fireworks, right? I don't think the animals really appreciate them too much. And so I tend not to be super fireworky, but I realize that a lot of people really like them. And again, there is two different perspectives on one thing, on the same sounds, the same visuals. They could hate them or love them, depending on how I frame it. Wow, how many things are like this? So are the things in your life, it's things in my life that we really don't like, that bother us or annoy us, especially if they're things that are there every day and we aren't able to change. When we lived in Hawaii, we lived on this curve where the cars coming up the hill, where there's a curve on a hill. So the cars going up the hill were revving their engines. Cars coming down the hill, we're braking. Extremely loud all night long. We had to reframe and shift that, or it would have driven us crazy. Do you have something like that? Maybe it's not an everyday thing. Maybe it's a food that you should be eating more often, eating your vegetables or eating some liver for iron because you have low iron, and you just don't like it. Is there a way that you could shift your framing or your perspective to make that experience enjoyable? This is one of those tools that sometimes we can take too far. There's things like abusive situations where people just reframe it in order to give themselves a reason to stay somewhere, where deep down, somewhere inside of them, they know that being there is not good for themselves. It's not good for their children. It's not even good for the abuser. But they stay because they've reframed everything in their mind in such a way, but they're not conscious of the reframing. They're not doing it is a positive tool. So we have to make sure with this tool that we use it positively, because it is something that almost habitually, if we feel stuck with something, if we feel powerless in our lives, then we will often reframe things in a way to make something that we actually do have the power to get out of bearable. But there might be other things, like those vegetables. You just don't like vegetables. But you know you should be eating vegetables. And your health practitioner said, look, you really should be eating some vegetables. That sometimes we have the power to consciously reframe that in our minds. I think I'll probably get a chance to use this today. That construction next door, I can reframe that, or I can frame that rather as a lot of noisy stuff. Can you get me away from this? And or I can frame it as progress being made in the lives of somebody that I care about in making their home what they want it to be. And then I can feel wonderful about those sounds. It's still likely that my family's going to go this morning and do a little blueberry picking at a farm that we know of. But still, we're going to get our chance today because that machine will probably be there for a while. What is it for you? Share in the comments. Is there somebody in your life, maybe a child, who you're just having trouble with? You're feeling frustrated with them right now. Can you reframe the experiences that you imagine they're going through so that you feel compassion and empathy for them? Is it exercise? Is it a habit you're trying to start or habit you're trying to break that you're having trouble with, and reframing could make all the difference? Share in the comments. It'd be really fun to hear. Love to you all, my friends. Thanks for joining me for morning tea, morning water. I'll see you tomorrow.